Welcome to today's video. Have you ever wondered how much the place where a child is born impacts their entire life? Today, we're exploring a seemingly simple topic that's full of fascinating complexities. Babies born in the US and Panama. What opportunities, what challenges will the country of their birth bring? Let's listen to their stories, hear their experiences, and better understand the journey of these special little citizens. You see, life is often as dramatic as a Korean drama. Just as a baby lands in the United States, not even having opened its eyes to the world, it immediately gets caught up in a national-level legal drama. The thing is, the right to citizenship, which people have taken for granted as born somewhere, belong there, suddenly had a massive question mark placed on it by a few powerful figures. And it's not just a casual question. They even sent an ultimatum to the US Supreme Court, the body considered the referee of the American legal arena. It might sound dry, but this is actually a very captivating story, no less thrilling than a detective movie where the clue lies in a law that's over 100 years old. Together, we'll peel back the layers of this issue, from the historical context of once upon a time, to the intense brain battles at the negotiating table, even the legal tricks that sometimes make you want to laugh until you cry. The once upon a time background, the 14th Amendment, and the story of citizenship. To understand the ins and outs of this story, we need to rewind to the time when the United States was still grappling with the scars of war after the fierce Civil War. At that time, the issue of citizenship became a topic hotter than a crab and tomato noodle soup on a summer day. And so, the 14th Amendment to the US Constitution was born, like a magic pill resolving so many disputes. The first clause of this amendment clearly stated, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside." It might sound as simple as eating candy, but the phrase, "subject to the jurisdiction thereof," is where so many fiery verbal battles would later erupt, except for the children of diplomats, because they are not entirely under US jurisdiction. Most people understood that simply being born on US soil automatically made you a US citizen. In legal circles, this is called the principle of jus soli, meaning right of the soil. This principle is considered one of the foundations of American society, reflecting the welcoming and inclusive spirit of a nation built by immigrants. It's like walking into a buffet. You can freely eat whatever is on the table, regardless of who you are or where you come from. The drama begins when President Trump flips the one script. However, life isn't always a dream. One fine day, or not so fine, depending on your perspective, President Donald Trump, a figure famous for his storm-causing statements, suddenly reopened this seemingly dormant issue. He not only strongly declared the deportation of illegal immigrants, but also targeted the very birthright citizenship that generations of Americans had believed in. He argued that the automatic citizenship of children born in the US to parents who are illegal immigrants was unreasonable and needed to be reconsidered. Imagine this. It's like you're playing a game of Monopoly. Everything is going smoothly, and suddenly someone announces that the rules have changed, and you risk losing everything. You'd definitely bristle and protest, right? That's exactly how many people felt upon hearing President Trump's statements. The ultimatum sent to the Supreme Court, a high-stakes or risky move. To realize his bold idea, President Trump didn't hesitate to send an executive document to the US Supreme Court. This could be seen as a high-stakes move or a risky one, depending on how you look at it. According to the information you provided, this document included three main requests. prevent lower courts from ruling on constitutional laws. This indicates that President Trump wanted to skip levels, bringing the issue directly to the highest court for a decisive ruling. It's like not wanting to waste time resolving a dispute at the local level and instead knocking directly on the provincial level for judgment. Prevent interference with federal executive action. This request reflects President Trump's desire to act freely on immigration matters without interference from the judicial branch. It's like a ship captain wanting to steer the ship himself without the crew offering opinions. Reconsider the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. This is the crux of the matter. President Trump wanted the Supreme Court to re-examine whether the 14th Amendment truly applies to the case of children born to parents who are illegal immigrants. The fiery legal battle, 22 states joined the fray naturally. Such a shocking move couldn't go without strong opposition. According to the information you provided, as many as 22 states and several counties united to sue President Trump. They argued that the decree completely violated the U.S. Constitution, specifically the 14th Amendment we mentioned earlier. Imagine this scene like a soccer match where one team suddenly changes the rules mid-game and the other team erupts in protest. This legal battle is sure to be intense and will consume much ink from legal scholars. The Speaker's profound explanation, not a final decision, just a test. According to the Speaker's explanation in the information you provided, President Trump's decree was not a final decision, but rather a plan for the courts to review the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. In simpler terms, it's like you're putting forward a scientific hypothesis and want other scientists to dissect and analyze whether it's correct or not. President Trump seems to be trying to test whether the Supreme Court is willing to reconsider an issue that has been considered unshakable for over 150 years. Discrimination or loopholes. A perspective on immigrant parenting. Important point the Speaker made is that President Trump's decree focuses on the case of children born in the U.S. to parents who are illegal immigrants. This is completely different from the case where the parents are legal immigrants or U.S. citizens, permanent residents. This is the trigger for the controversy. Supporters of President Trump's view argue that it's a form of loophole and unfair to legal immigrants for an illegal immigrant to exploit U.S. law so that their children can obtain U.S. citizenship. Conversely, opponents argue that discriminating against children based on their parents' immigration status goes against the humanitarian spirit and the U.S. Constitution. They argue that once a child is born on U.S. soil and subject to its jurisdiction, there is no reason to deprive them of their citizenship, subject to the jurisdiction. The Achilles heel of the 14th Amendment as mentioned earlier. The phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, in the 14th Amendment, is the Achilles heel of this issue. It has become the stage for countless heated legal debates. Those who support President Trump's view often cite the history of the 14th Amendment's creation. They argued that its original purpose was to ensure citizenship for newly freed slaves and did not apply to the children of those without a clear legal connection to the United States, such as illegal immigrants. However, opponents point out that the Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed that the phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, includes almost everyone born on U.S. soil, with very narrow exceptions, such as the children of diplomats. They argue that reinterpreting this clause after more than 150 years is an act that goes against precedent and could have unforeseen consequences. Illegal immigration versus overstaying, two different categories. The Speaker was also very astute in pointing out the difference between illegal immigration, entering the U.S. without documentation, and overstaying entering the US legally, but staying longer than permitted. This is a very important point to clarify. An illegal immigrant is someone who has crossed the border illegally or entered the US with a fake visa. Meanwhile, someone who has overstayed initially entered the US legally, for example, with a tourist or work visa, but stayed longer than allowed without applying for an extension or change of status. Although both cases violate US law, they have certain legal differences. President Trump's focus on the case of parents who are illegal immigrants suggests that he is targeting those he believes have no rights in the US. Inside scoop from the White House, who is not subject to US jurisdiction. To bolster his argument, the speaker cited the White House website's definition of individuals born in the US who are not subject to US jurisdiction and do not have US citizenship privileges. According to this definition, one of the cases mentioned is when the parents are illegally present in the US and the father is not a citizen or lawful permanent resident. This could be considered the ace in the hole that supporters of President Trump's view are playing. They argue that this definition shows that even the White House acknowledges that not everyone born in the US automatically has US citizenship. In-depth analysis behind the controversy. So, what truly lies behind these fiery controversies? Why has an issue that seemed settled suddenly become the center of attention? Political factor. There's no denying that immigration is one of the most divisive political topics in the US in recent years. President Trump's reopening of the birthright citizenship issue may have been a way for him to garner support from voters with a hardline stance on immigration. Different legal interpretations. As we've seen, there are different legal views on how to interpret the 14th Amendment. Those who support changing birthright citizenship tend to interpret this law more narrowly, while those who oppose it tend to interpret it more broadly. Issue of fairness. Some argue that automatically granting citizenship to children born to parents who are illegal immigrants is unfair to those who have gone through a difficult and expensive legal immigration process. Concerns about national security. Others worry that loosening the rules on citizenship could create loopholes for terrorists or criminals to exploit and infiltrate the U.S. Valuable evidence. Looking at the world, it's not just about the U.S. To gain a more comprehensive understanding of this issue, let's try to travel outside the US and see how other countries around the world handle the issue of citizenship. In fact, not every country in the world applies the principle of jus soli as absolutely as the US. Many countries, especially in Europe and Asia, apply the principle of jus sanguinis, meaning right of blood. According to this principle, a child will have the nationality of their parents, regardless of where they are born. Some other countries combine both principles. For example, a child born on the territory of a country that follows jus sanguinis, but whose parents do not pass on their nationality, will be granted the nationality of the country where they were born. Comparing with other countries shows that there is no single formula for the issue of citizenship. Each country will have its own regulations based on its history, culture, and specific circumstances. Panama. The Unexpected Layover, a tragic comedy of 7 Vietnamese dreamers adrift from the American dream. Part 1. Setting the stage. The unexpected detour. Ever heard of that saying, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans? Well, buckle up, because this story takes that saying and launches it into the stratosphere of irony. Our protagonists, 7 Vietnamese individuals, embarked on a journey fueled by hope, ambition, and perhaps a touch of that universal human desire for a better life, the pursuit of the American dream. They packed their bags, their dreams, and probably a healthy dose of me. Just kidding. Maybe. But, in a plot twist worthy of a Coen Brothers film, their destination wasn't the glittering lights of New York City, the sunny shores of California, or the sprawling plains of Texas. No, their journey took an unexpected detour to Panama. Yes, Panama, that small Central American nation, famous for its canal, its beautiful beaches, and, well, for being a place many of us might need to look up on a map. It's the kind of place you'd expect to see in a travel brochure, not as the central setting for a story about immigration, deportation, and the fragile nature of hope. This isn't your typical rags to riches immigrant narrative. This is more like Rags to unexpected layover in a tropical country while trying to figure out what just happened. It's a story that blends the serious realities of international law, the human cost of border policies, and the sheer unpredictability of life. And we're going to explore it all with a touch of humor, because sometimes all you can do is laugh and learn in the face of the absurd. Part 2. The Legal Labyrinth, Navigating the Asylum Maze in Panama. Let's get down to the legal brass tacks. Our 7 Vietnamese travelers find themselves in Panama, not by choice, but by the long and often unforgiving arm of U.S. immigration law. They've been deported. But what does that actually mean for their legal status in Panama? The 30-day plus 60 countdown. We know they have 30 days to leave Panama, with a possible 60-day extension. Think of it as a ticking clock in a reality TV show, except the stakes are far higher than winning $1 million. This time frame is crucial. It's a window of opportunity, but also a period of intense uncertainty. The asylum option, a beacon of hope and bureaucracy. As you correctly pointed out, these individuals have the right to apply for asylum in Panama. This right is enshrined in international law, specifically the 1951 Refugee Convention and its 1967 Protocol, to which Panama is a signatory. This means Panama has a legal obligation to consider their asylum claims fairly. UNHCR, the refugee agency, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. UNHCR plays a crucial role here. They have a presence in Panama and are tasked with protecting refugees and asylum seekers worldwide. Our 7 Vietnamese individuals can and should contact UNHCR, ese office in Panama City, UNP, AR Oficina Nacional, para la Atención de Refugiados. Panama's Refugee Office. Panama also has its own National Refugee Agency, ONPA. This is the governmental body responsible for processing asylum claims within the country. The process, a paperwork odyssey. Applying for asylum is not a walk in the park. It's a complex, often lengthy process that involves interviews. They will be interviewed by ONPA officials, where they will need to explain their reasons for seeking asylum. They'll need to articulate why they fear persecution if they return to Vietnam. Evidence. This is where things get tricky. Ideally, they would have evidence to support their claims. Documents, testimonies, anything that corroborates their fear of persecution. This could be evidence of political activism, religious persecution, threats, or any other form of persecution based on the grounds outlined in the Refugee Convention. Race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. Waiting game. The asylum process can take months, even years. In some cases, during this time, they will likely be in a state of legal limbo, possibly with some form of temporary documentation allowing them to remain in Panama. While their case is being assessed, The challenge is hurdles on the path to protection. Language barrier. This is a huge one. Unless they are fluent in Spanish, they will need an interpreter. Finding a reliable Vietnamese-Spanish interpreter in Panama might be like finding a needle in a haystack. Legal aid organizations, which we'll discuss later, might be able to help. Burden of proof. The burden of proof rests on the asylum seeker. They need to convince the Panamanian authorities that their fear of persecution is well. This can be incredibly difficult, especially if they fled Vietnam without documentation, or if the persecution they faced was subtle or not. While documented. Financial strain. While waiting for their asylum claim to be processed, they need to survive. They may not be allowed to work legally, at least not initially. This means they need to have savings or find some form of support to cover their living expenses. Psychological toll. The uncertainty, the stress of the legal process, and the trauma of their past experiences can take a significant psychological toll. Access to mental health support is crucial. Part 3. The American Dream, Deferred or Detoured. Let's step back from the legal jargon and consider the human element. These 7 individuals likely had a vision of their future in the United States. They probably spent considerable time, effort, and resources planning their journey. They may have left behind families, jobs, and everything familiar. To be deported to Panama is a jarring disruption of those plans. The shattered dream, the American dream, is a powerful, almost mythical concept. It represents opportunity, freedom, and the chance for a better life. For these individuals, that dream has been, at the very least, severely delayed. The emotional impact of this cannot be overstated. Options and dilemmas. They now face a difficult set of choices: embrace Panama and asylum. They can fully commit to the asylum process in Panama, hoping to build a new life there. This requires adapting to a new culture, language, and potentially a very different way of life. The third country option. They might try to reach another country, perhaps another nation in Latin America, or even attempt to re-enter the United States. A highly risky and legally fraught option. This path is filled with uncertainty and potential dangers. Return to Vietnam. This might be the least desirable option, especially if they genuinely fear persecution. However, it might become the only realistic choice if other avenues fail. Part 4. The role of Vietnam. A complex relationship. The role of the Vietnamese government is, as you rightly noted, a complex and potentially sensitive issue. While governments have a responsibility to protect their citizens abroad, the reality is often far more nuanced. Consular assistance, limited scope. The Vietnamese embassy or consulate in Panama can provide some level of consular assistance. This might include information and guidance, providing information about Panamanian laws and procedures, contacting family, helping them contact family members back in Vietnam, consular visits if they are detained. A consular officer might visit them. Legal aid potentially. They might be able to provide a list of local lawyers or organizations that offer legal aid. Limitations and constraints. However, the Vietnamese government's ability or willingness to intervene is limited by several factors. Sovereignty. Panama is a sovereign nation and has the right to enforce its own immigration laws. Vietnam cannot simply demand the release of its citizens. Diplomatic relations. The level of intervention may depend on the overall relationship between Vietnam and Panama. Reason for deportation. If these individuals were deported from the U.S. for serious criminal offenses, Vietnam's willingness to intervene might be further reduced by political sensitivity, If the individuals are seeking asylum based on political persecution in Vietnam, the government's stance is likely to be even more complex. They may be reluctant to acknowledge any wrongdoing, or to actively assist individuals who are claiming persecution. Resources. Embassies and consulates often have limited resources and staff. They may not be able to provide extensive support to every citizen in need. A delicate balance. The Vietnamese government has to balance its responsibility to protect its citizens with its diplomatic obligations and its own internal political considerations. This is a delicate balancing act, and the outcome is often unpredictable. Part 5. The Information Minefield. Navigating the world of fake news and social media in today's hyper-connected world. Information and misinformation spreads like wildfire. This is especially true in situations like this, which are often emotionally charged and politically sensitive. Social media, a double-edged sword. Social media platforms can be a valuable source of information and support. However, they are also breeding grounds for rumors, speculation, and outright falsehoods. Echo chambers. People tend to gravitate towards information that confirms their existing beliefs, creating echo chambers where misinformation can thrive. Emotional manipulation. Stories about vulnerable individuals can easily be manipulated to evoke strong emotions, making it harder to discern fact from fiction. Reliable sources. Seeking the truth. It's crucial to rely on credible sources of information. UNHCR. Official statements and reports from UNHCR are a primary source of information about the rights and protections afforded to refugees and asylum seekers. International human rights organizations. Organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch often investigate and report on human rights abuses, including those related to migration and asylum. Reputable news outlets. Major news organizations with a track record of accurate reporting and a presence in the region are generally more reliable than random social media posts. Vietnamese embassy consulate. While their perspective may be influenced by the government's position, they can provide official information about consular services and the government's stance. Fact-checking websites, Snopes, PolitiFact, etc. Critical thinking. The key is to approach all information with a healthy dose of skepticism. Ask yourself, who is the source? What are their biases? Is the information corroborated by other sources? Does it seem plausible? Is it emotionally manipulative? Part 6. The Support Network. Finding help in Panama. These 7 individuals are not alone. Panama has a number of organizations that can provide support to refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants. UNHCR Panama. As mentioned earlier, this is the primary organization responsible for protecting refugees. They can provide information, guidance, and potentially some material assistance. Non-governmental organizations, NGOs. HAES Panama. HAES, originally the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, is a global organization that provides legal, social, and economic support to refugees and migrants. They have a presence in Panama. Caritas Panama. Caritas is a Catholic organization that provides humanitarian assistance to those in need, including refugees and migrants. Servicio Jesuita a Refugiados JRS Panama. The Jesuit Refugee Service (JRS) is another organization that provides support to refugees and migrants, including legal aid, psychosocial support, and advocacy. Local NGOs. There are likely other, smaller, local NGOs in Panama that work with vulnerable populations. Finding them on HCR website. The UNHCR website has a directory of organizations that work with refugees in different countries. Online search. Searching for refugee support, Panama, or migrant assistance, Panama, can yield results. Networking. Once they connect with one organization, they can often be referred to others. Part 7. Deeper dive. The legal framework of asylum in Panama. Let's get a little more specific about Panama's legal framework for asylum. While Panama adheres to the 1951 Refugee Convention, it also has its own domestic laws and regulations. Executive Decree No. 23, 1998. This decree outlines the procedures for determining refugee status in Panama. Key provisions. Definition of refugee. Panama's definition of a refugee generally aligns with the 1951 Convention. Non-refoulement. Panama is prohibited from returning a refugee to a country where they face persecution. The principle of non-refoulement. Right to a fair hearing. Asylum seekers have the right to a fair and impartial hearing of their claim. Access to legal counsel. They have the right to legal representation, although this may be difficult to obtain in practice due to financial constraints. Appeal process. If their asylum claim is rejected, they have the right to appeal the decision. Temporary protection. They may offer other forms of legal status to be in the country, and this is granted when someone does not qualify as a refugee, but they still cannot return to their country. Challenges in practice. Backlogs. Like many countries, Panama may have a backlog of asylum cases, leading to delays in processing. Resource constraints. ONPA may have limited resources, which can affect the quality and efficiency of the asylum process. Interpretation of the law. The interpretation and application of refugee law can be complex and may vary depending on the specific circumstances of each case. Part 8. The broader context. Migration in the Americas. The situation of these 7 Vietnamese individuals is part of a much larger story of migration in the Americas. Push and pull factors. People migrate for a variety of reasons, including economic opportunity, seeking better jobs and living standards, political instability, fleeing conflict, persecution, or authoritarian regimes, violence and crime, escaping gang violence or organized crime. Environmental factors. Climate change, natural disasters. Family reunification. U.S. as a destination. The United States has historically been a major destination for migrants from around the world, including from Vietnam. U.S. immigration policy. U.S. immigration policies have become increasingly restrictive in recent years, making it more difficult for people to enter and remain in the country legally. The role of transit countries. Countries like Panama often serve as transit points for migrants traveling to the United States. Regional context. Some of the migration flows have changed due to new migratory policies in the region. Part 9. The human cost. Beyond the legalities, easy to get lost in the legal and political complexities of this situation. But it's important to remember that we're talking about real people, with real lives, hopes, and fears, trauma and resilience. These individuals may have experienced trauma in their home country, during their journey, and now in their current situation. At the same time, they have also demonstrated remarkable resilience in their efforts to seek a better life. Uncertainty and anxiety. The uncertainty of their legal status and their future can be incredibly stressful. Loss and separation. They may be separated from family and loved ones, adding to their emotional burden. Hope and determination. Despite the challenges, they likely still hold on to hope for a better future. Part 10. Potential outcomes and future scenarios. What might the future hold for these 7 individuals? There are several possibilities. Asylum granted. If their asylum claims are successful, they will be granted refugee status in Panama. This would allow them to live and work in the country and eventually apply for permanent residency. Asylum rejected. If their claims are rejected, they could face deportation back to Vietnam. They might appeal the decision, but if the appeal fails, deportation becomes a real possibility. Temporary protection. Panama might offer some form of temporary protection, allowing them to stay in the country for a limited period. Irregular migration. They might attempt to move to another country irregularly, without legal authorization. This is a risky option that could expose them to exploitation and further legal problems. Return to Vietnam. They might voluntarily choose to return to Vietnam, either because they are unable to secure legal status elsewhere, or because they decide that returning is the best option for them. Resettlement to a third country, unlikely. In rare cases, UNHCR might resettle refugees to a third country, but this is typically reserved for the most vulnerable cases and is not a common outcome. Part 11. Lessons learned and policy implications. This case, while specific to 7 individuals, highlights broader issues related to migration, asylum, and international law. The need for fair and efficient asylum systems. Countries need to have fair and efficient asylum systems that can process claims in a timely manner and provide adequate protection to those who qualify. The importance of legal aid. Access to legal representation is crucial for asylum seekers to navigate the complex legal process, addressing root causes of migration. Addressing the root causes of migration, such as poverty, conflict, and persecution, is essential to reducing the number of people who are forced to flee their homes. International cooperation. Addressing migration challenges requires international cooperation and burden sharing. The human cost of restrictive immigration policies. Restrictive immigration policies can have unintended consequences, such as forcing people into dangerous and irregular migration routes. Part 12. A final word. The human spirit endures. The story of these 7 Vietnamese individuals is a reminder of the complexities of the human experience, the enduring power of hope, and the often unpredictable twists and turns of life's journey. It's a story that transcends borders, languages, and legal jargon. It's a story about people, their dreams, and their struggles. While we can analyze the legal framework, discuss policy implications, and speculate about future outcomes, we must never lose sight of the human element. These are not just statistics or case numbers. They are individuals with unique stories, families, and aspirations. Their journey, though unexpectedly diverted to Panama, is a testament to the human spirit's resilience and its unwavering pursuit of a better life. Part 13. Adding some hen, the humor in the absurd. Let's inject a bit more of that promised hen, a light-hearted perspective on a serious situation, because sometimes laughter is the best medicine, or at least a decent coping mechanism. The unexpected tourist. Imagine the brochure, Panama, come for the canal. Stay because you were deported. It's not exactly the tagline the Panamanian Tourism Board is going for, but it captures the absurdity of the situation. Lost in translation, literally. Picture the scene. 7 Vietnamese individuals trying to navigate the Panamanian bureaucracy with limited Spanish and possibly relying on a well-worn phrasebook. It's a recipe for comedic misunderstandings, worthy of a sitcom. The Me Quest one can only imagine the culinary challenges. Finding authentic Vietnamese food in Panama might be a quest in itself. Perhaps they'll open a mee stand and become local celebrities. The deported chefs of Panama City. The American dream. On hold, it's like putting your favorite TV show on pause. You know it's still there, but you have to wait and deal with a whole lot of unexpected drama before you can get back to it. The what now moment. That feeling when you realize you're in a country you never planned to visit, with a legal status that's more complicated than assembling IKEA furniture. It's the ultimate what now moment. Part 14. Specific examples and case studies, adding depth and context to further enrich our analysis. Let's bring in some specific examples and case studies, fictionalized, but based on real-world situations. To illustrate the points we've discussed. Case study 1. The political activist. Imagine one of the 7 individuals. Lynn was a blogger in Vietnam who wrote critically about the government. She fled after receiving threats. Her asylum claim would likely be based on political persecution. The challenge for Lynn would be gathering evidence to support her claim, such as screenshots of her blog posts, threatening messages, and perhaps testimony from other activists. Case study 2. The religious minority. Trung, another member of the group, belongs to a religious minority group that faces discrimination in Vietnam. He might claim asylum based on religious persecution. He would need to demonstrate that he faced discrimination or harassment because of his faith. Case study 3. The economic migrant. Nam left Vietnam primarily for economic reasons, hoping to find a better-paying job in the U.S. His case for asylum would be much weaker, as economic hardship alone is generally not considered a valid basis for asylum. Example: UNHCR's role. We can look at real-world examples of UNHCR's work in Panama. How many asylum applications do they process each year? What is the success rate? What kind of support do they provide? Researching UNHCR's annual reports and publications would provide concrete data. Example: HIAS, Panama Services. We can explore the specific services offered by HIAS Panama. Do they provide legal aid? Do they offer language classes? Do they help with job placement? This would give a clearer picture of the practical support available to our 7 individuals. Example: comparing 2 other countries. How are similar cases of Vietnamese being deported to other countries dealt with? Part 15. Expert opinions, adding credibility. To strengthen our analysis, let's incorporate hypothetical quotes from experts in relevant fields. Immigration lawyer in Panama. The asylum process in Panama can be challenging, but it's certainly possible to win a case if you have strong evidence and a well-prepared application. The key is to work with a knowledgeable lawyer and to be patient. UNHCR representative. We are committed to protecting the rights of refugees and asylum seekers in Panama. We work closely with the government and other organizations to ensure that their claims are heard fairly and that they receive the support they need. Human rights activist. The situation of Vietnamese migrants in the Americas highlights the need for a more humane and compassionate approach to migration. We must address the root causes of displacement and ensure that people are not forced to take dangerous journeys in search of safety and opportunity. Vietnamese embassy official. We offer consular service and assistance to all of our citizens. Part 16. The long view. What does the future hold? The situation of migration, particularly in the Americas, is not static. It changes and evolves. What is the long-term outlook for migration patterns, asylum policies, and the relationship between countries like the US, Vietnam, and Panama? geopolitics shifts and new policies can all impact migration flows. Climate change. Increasing migration is expected. Technology. How will technology be able to help refugees and migrants? Part 17. Call to action. What can be done? While this article primarily focuses on analysis, we can conclude with a brief call to action, suggesting ways individuals and organizations can contribute to positive change. Support refugee organizations. Donate to or volunteer with organizations like UNHCR, HIAS, and others that work with refugees and asylum seekers. Advocate for fair immigration policies. Contact your elected officials and urge them to support fair and humane immigration policies. Educate yourself and others. Learn more about the issues facing refugees and migrants and share your knowledge with others. Promote empathy and understanding. Challenge stereotypes and prejudices about migrants and refugees. Welcome refugees in your community. If you have the opportunity, reach out to refugees in your community and offer support. Part 18. Conclusion. A story of resilience. The journey of 7 Vietnamese, originally destined for the United States, but rerouted to Panama, is a micro-example of global migration. It is a difficult situation, which highlights the complications surrounding immigration, international law, and human rights. This situation allows for multiple outcomes. It may highlight the enduring human spirit. Word count, check, and final. Polish. This outline provides a solid structure for a 20,000-word article. Each section would need to be fleshed out with detailed information, specific examples, and compelling narratives. The key is to maintain a balance between in-depth analysis and a light, engaging tone. Remember to cite all sources properly, and to double-check all facts. The final step would be to carefully proofread and edit the entire article to ensure clarity, accuracy, and flow. The goal is to create a piece that is both informative and enjoyable to read, shedding light on a complex issue with a touch of humanity and humor. And that's a wrap. We hope you enjoyed that roller coaster of information, and maybe even had a few laughs along the way. If you thought this video was awesome, smash that like button and share it with everyone you know. Your friends, your family, your pet goldfish, everyone. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our future videos, where we'll be uncovering even more mind-blowing secrets. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go lie down. See ya.